Really happy to be here. I started as an industrial designer, and in the past, I would say 2.5 years, I've been working with Facebook, and now it's a different name called Meta, and so I changed the name, same company. I started to become a mentor and mentoring more during the COVID, which kind of really timeline really well with ADPList. Have kind of coach and mentor many people around the world. I get to meet lots of designers around the world as well. So really happy to contributing to this platform and really honored to speak to all of you today. Cindy.
Thank you. I'm Sydney. I'm a creative director at HBO Max, and I have a pretty traditional graphic design background. I went to art school and started working at startups in the Bay Area, where I'm originally from, and just sort of moved up the ranks from there. We'll actually go into a little bit more detail of my career journey in a few minutes. But I also got really involved with ADPList during the pandemic. I'm really passionate about mentorship, especially students and just young designers, because I didn't have a whole lot of mentorship and I was very confused when I started my design career. So it's really important to me to demystify the design industry, so to speak. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sydney and Roger. So without further ado, before we start, I would love to hear a little bit more about, where everyone is calling from. So we're calling from different parts of the world. Sydney is from LA, and Roger is in Seattle, and I'm in San Francisco. We have Jessica here, who is from the ADPList team. She's calling from Vancouver in Canada. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about where everyone is calling in from. So you can put it in the comment. Wow, there's someone calling from Nigeria. Apparently it's 1 a.m. there. All right. With that said, we obviously have a good crowd here to begin. This session will be recorded and it's on YouTube Live. One of the things that we encourage you during this session is to write your notes down. Obviously share your learnings with us on social media. Tag ADPList when you share your learnings, so that that people that are not here as well can learn from you, whether it be on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Always share your learning publicly. So go for it. Tag us, and we will help you to share it around as well. So yeah, it's a learning community. With that said, I will pass my time over to the speakers. I will unspotlight myself and just have the two of them there to start sharing their screen and to begin. So yeah, the stage is all yours, Sydney and Roger.
Awesome, thank you. Go ahead and share the deck here. All right, can everyone see? I assume yes. Going from internship to full-time designers, let's do it. So first things first, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I won't tell you who I am again, but I am going to start off the session speaking more generally about how to maximize your internship experience. And these are really all ideas that you can apply to any job at any stage of your career. And then Roger's going to jump in and speak more specifically about internships and from the intern manager point of view. So I want to start first with how you may be feeling. I spend a lot of time mentoring young creatives and have had a few interns myself, and emotions tend to come up a lot in our conversations because getting your first job can leave you feeling really anxious and unsure of how to move forward. I really like this quote from Steve Jobs: "You can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards," because the beginning of your career is scary. It's easy to feel doubt and insecurity and imposter syndrome. And we all feel this way, even the people who seem like they have it all figured out. When you look at your peers or the people you look up to in your industry, it might seem like their career trajectory looks like this, a linear path upwards. And if you're anything like me, you're left wondering, how can I keep up? I have some good news. No one's career path looks like this. And no matter what you might see on LinkedIn or on TikTok with a day in the life as any job at Google video, this is not the reality. It looks more like this. This is what my career path has been. I started out with no job at all. I didn't even do a big fancy internship during college, so I was stressing out. It took me several months to land my first job, and as it says here, I was not paid very well, But I was a sole designer for the better part of a year and got a ton of experience. And this company is doing really well today. Then I had an old teacher reach out to me about an internship. It was a much larger company and I would have a creative team to learn from. But I was really worried that taking an internship after having a job would be a step backwards. At the same time, I also felt like it was probably really good for me and my career journey to do this. So I did it anyway. And at the end of the internship, they brought me on as a contractor. I did that for a while, but I really wanted a full-time job. So I started to apply to other places. And eventually I did get a great job at another startup. It was a really cool industry and I was paid really well. Then that company was viciously acquired and everyone got laid off, including me. And suddenly I was spiraling and back to no job. This was a really difficult time in my life. I thought about quitting design altogether, but I was also really motivated to get a paycheck and eat and stuff. So it ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me because eventually I was able to get a job at Apple, which was a really rewarding and hard experience in and of itself. And then eventually moved on to HBO as an associate creative director and then promoted to creative director. So what's my point? I don't just like talking about myself. I just want to make it really clear to all of you that your growth as a designer is not going to be linear. And any fear that you might be feeling right now or at any point in your career is totally normal. But now that we've taken a moment to talk about our feelings, let's get into it. When we think about how to maximize our internship experience, we can really narrow down to 4 core ideas. Collect experiences and always say yes, build a support team, connect with as many people as possible, apply early, and interview often. So let's dive deeper into collecting experiences and always saying yes. The idea is really to live your life at the boundary of your job description. Your internship program, your manager, they're already going to have ideas around how they want to use your time. That could be helping with a specific business objective or a special project that they think will give you a certain type of experience. But you can also come to the table with an idea of what you want to get out of your internship too. How do you want to spend your time? So what does that look like in practice? This is Anna. She's my real life intern at HBO Max. And Anna came into the program as a marketing design intern. This circle is representative of what I expected of her as her manager, and she was really excited and open to learn from the team about marketing. But Anna was also honest with me, and she expressed that she was also interested in learning about other types of design, especially product design. Because Anna came to the table with her own point of view about what she wanted to get out of her internship experience, and how she could add value to the business, she got to work really closely with our in-app team. And this team produces all the content and editorial design on the HBO Max platform, as represented with this purple circle here. And when they asked her if she wanted to help design the hub for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is a bit of a mouthful, but she said yes. This allowed her to work towards her own career goals. It also showed me, her manager, and a whole host of other hiring managers in the org that she's able to think really strategically. She's able to take initiative and self-start and really advocate for herself. She's an incredibly collaborative and enthusiastic teammate, and she's super passionate about design and her work. These are all key attributes that hiring managers are looking for in their next gen design hires. Which leads me to my next section, build a support team. And a big hint is that you can start with your manager. No one gets to the top alone. You need a support team. And you might be reading the slide or listening to me speak thinking, I don't care about making it to the top. I'm just trying to survive my internship and get my job. And I get that. But like I said, this lesson is full of key principles that you've learned now and apply for the rest of your career. They'll help you get your first job and the next one and the next one. So what is a support team? It's made up of a combination of these people. You don't always need all of them. It's going to be specific to you, but you do need some of them. So let's break them down. During your internship, you definitely want a mentor and a sponsor, probably multiples, and friends. And sometimes people will take on more than one role in your life, and that's totally okay. But I see a lot of people use these terms interchangeably, so I want to outline some of the key differences. A mentor is an expert in your field. They're going to advise you on how to approach different aspects of your job and your career from that specific perspective. This could be your manager. It could also be another more senior designer on your team, an art director, a creative director, an ADPList member, etc. And you can have more than one. A sponsor is more of an advocate. They're more senior and connected. Depending on your organization, this could be a senior designer, but it's definitely better if it's an art director, creative director, or other manager. This person helps to introduce you to key players in your organization or your industry at large. They also talk you up to their peers when you're not in the room, which is super, super important for conversion and promotion. It's especially helpful to have a sponsor or a few if you're a woman of color, a person of color, or any other type of minority. The other folks in your corner could be a career coach, but these people can often cost money and tend to be more valuable later on. And a therapist, which isn't for everyone, but I'm a huge advocate for therapy for those that are interested in that type of growth and reflection. And of course, your friends. Everyone needs friends. So when we think about Anna, she built a support team that allowed her to maximize her time at HBO Max. She found a mentor, myself, who was able to give her advice on how to approach her projects, her relationships with others at the company, and her career. She found sponsors, which I'm also one of them, but I'm not the only one. She befriended other creative directors, art directors, and senior designers at the company, all of whom continued to introduce her to others and allowed her to work on lots of different parts of the business and get multiple interviews. Anna also made friends, of course, in all of the people that I just mentioned, but also with the other interns at the company. These friends gave her new perspective. They were going through what she was going through as an intern during a pandemic, working remote, and they'll be her peers in the tech industry as she continues to grow. Friends are super important also because they hype you up, which brings me to my next point. Brag about yourself and let your support team brag about you too. We're going to turn brag into a positive word. I mean it positively in this context because you have a lot to be proud of and you deserve to be your own hype man. You know, did you just help launch the product redesign at your company? Post about that on LinkedIn. Did you just update your portfolio? Share that on Instagram stories or on a post. Did you do something else super cool work-wise? Text your group chat and let your support team hype you up. I have an example of why this is valuable. So I recently had an opportunity to speak on a podcast that I really love. And this podcast was introduced to me by a friend of mine on my support team. The only reason I was able to do that was because I saw the founder posting some cool stuff he was researching on LinkedIn. And this was him bragging about himself. And his support team was right there with him in the comments. And I thought he was very impressive. And I started commenting too. He then followed me, saw me bragging about myself, and saw my mentors and sponsors and friends also hyping me up. And so when he wanted to bring a creative director onto his show, he thought of me. And so that's the power of your support team. It's also the power of networking, which we're going to talk about now. So if you're anything like me, the idea of networking feels really ambiguous and daunting and maybe even terrifying, especially if you're introverted. And everyone talks about how it's super important, which makes it seem really intimidating. But the good news is it's not a big deal. And you're probably already doing it. You know, classmates, they're in your network. Teachers, they're in your network. Other people in your life, anyone you talk to regularly, even family, they're all in your network. Networking is just an unnecessarily confusing way to say, make lots of friends. Of course, not everyone you meet ends up being your best friend. And similarly, not everyone you meet will be on your support team. And that's totally okay. These relationships are still incredibly valuable. They expose you to other parts of the business you might not otherwise get to work with or on, like in the case of Anna. They also give you insight, and their stories can help inspire you. So for example, I know a woman named Katie who I met at HBO Max. She was the SVP of marketing and is now the CMO at a company called KiwiCo. And full disclosure, Katie is not on my support team. She is in my network, though. We have met, we've talked to each other. And Katie has a similar background as me, at least culturally. And she's only a couple years older than I am. But man, is she such an impressive person. And I love hearing her speak because it really motivates me and gives me a fresh perspective and way of looking at things, especially related to my career. Also, someone you meet, sometimes people you meet will become part of your support group and maybe even lifelong friends. Finally, you never know when your paths will cross someone again, and your network is the best way to get a referral at a company that you've dreamed of working for. Almost everyone that I know, myself included, has gotten interviews through referrals. Back to Anna. I mentioned earlier that her connections, her network helped her get multiple interviews. Some of those interviews came from people she met through HBO Max, others came from school connections or just other people in her life. But it wasn't just me or other people she knew doing the work. Your sponsor will say the words to you, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And that's as far as it generally goes. It's up to you to take that opportunity and run with it. Which leads me to my last section. Apply early and interview often. And I'm going to start this off with perhaps a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. Never assume that just because you're an intern, you're definitely going to be offered a full-time job at your company. There are a number of reasons why you don't get offered a full-time job at the end of your internship. The obvious one is that your performance was poor, but I'm going to assume that that doesn't apply to anyone here because you're all rock stars who are looking to take charge of your careers, and you're already doing that by attending this talk and joining ADPList. But there are a lot of other scenarios that exist where your manager may really want to hire you and they can't. There are a lot of misconceptions out there on how much power an individual manager has in hiring. For example, don't take everything you see on corporate TikTok for face value. It often takes multiple people across your organization and HR to get the green light to hire anyone, even an intern that's already there. So what can you do? Ideally, you're having candid conversations with your manager regularly through one-on-ones about conversion from day one of your internship. Make sure that they know that you want a full-time job. You'd be surprised at how often in conversations that doesn't come up directly. Be honest with them about them. Tell them what you want. And ideally, they'll be honest with you in return, so that way you can appropriately prepare regardless of the outcome. But one of the best ways to prepare is to continue looking for, applying to, and interviewing for a full-time job during your internship. Don't wait until the end. If you work for a large company, this can mean looking at other roles and other teams on some kind of internal job board, which is a big reason why connecting with as many people as you can at your internship is really important. But it also means looking elsewhere. You can be honest with recruiters about your internship. I highly encourage that you do so that when it ends, companies understand your availability. And I just want to say, I know this is a fear that comes up a lot. A good company is never going to pressure you to end your internship early and burn that bridge. They'll have you start when it's over, as long as you're communicating when your availability is. So don't feel like you have to tell them, I'm available right away, if you're not. And in the beginning, it might feel like a grind. You're new in your career. There's a lot of competition. At this point, it's going to be a numbers game. Definitely use your network, as I've said a billion times. But cold applying can work. It's harder, but it can work. In fact, almost every job I've ever had, including Apple and HBO Max, I got through cold applying. But it's hard. I don't recommend it. If you know someone, get the referral. And then take every interview you can, even the informational ones. An informational interview can become a valuable connection later. Maybe they'll have headcount later and they'll throw your name in the ring. And the truth is, interviewing is hard. It's really hard, which means practice is of the utmost importance. Even if you get the job at your internship, you probably aren't going to stay there for your whole career. So when you're green, when you're new, this is the best time to totally suck at it and practice and get better. And there are a lot of different kinds of interviews that you're going to encounter, from casual and conversational, which is my personal favorite style of interviewing, to more technical and specific lines of questioning. These are things like, tell me about a time when you pitched a concept and your creative director shot it down. How did you react? There's also presentation panels. This is typically 30-minute, 45-minute, even 60 minutes where you are presenting to an audience of multiple people, and you're doing all of the talking for the majority of that time block, ending with kind of a Q&A for the last few minutes. And lastly, there's technical tests and whiteboarding. That's less common on my side of the fence in brand and marketing, but it absolutely can happen. Every hiring manager and company will have their own philosophies and approach on whether they think a certain style is more effective than others. It's ultimately like a really deeply personal choice. So you want to make sure that you're able to adapt to all of them, because you will encounter all of them during your career journey. A quick note on feelings. I have a lot of them. Actively looking for a job while working can be really stressful and overwhelming, but it really is the best way to position yourself to avoid an unnecessary gap in your employment and for your own peace of mind. You know, this way, if your internship ends and they can't convert you, you'll have job options elsewhere. Or if you are converted, it could give you the confidence to negotiate better pay or benefits, or you might just decide, hey, this other job is more interesting to me now. And the truth is, you're going to reach multiple points in your career where you're ready to find new work, and you'll most likely be engaging in this process over and over and over again. So take the practice where you can get it. With all of this in mind, with a little bit of persistence and a little help from your friends, you will get a job. It might not happen as fast as you'd like, or it might happen much faster than you think. Everyone's journey is different, and I believe in you. With that, I'll hand it over to Roger.
Cindy, thank you so much. And I wish I have all this great advice 10 years ago when I was in school. And I love the fact you talked about, there's so many emotion and feelings and the roller coaster in the internship. Thank you so much. So I'm trying to complement what Cindy talked about. So the next slide shows some of the things I will talk through, which are mostly what is the perspective from intern manager. So in this, I wanted to talk quickly about what's a 12 weeks internship is like. And as intern manager, what I'm looking for in intern, what I'm looking for as an intern manager. I will talk about two different cases, the two interns I have managed, which is their true experience. One of them is an intern from Panorama Education, and I believe she is in the talk today. So she is more than welcome to talk to call my bullshit. And then I also have a different intern in Facebook and now Meta, which I'll talk about the experience as well. And by the end, I'll give a few tips and guides. So let's start. So what is a 12 weeks internship is like? Cindy, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is for intern manager. We have kind of a portal to really think and prepare about an internship. So this is only a glimpse of what's going on look like. But as an intern manager, usually we start preparing way before you arrive on campus or online. So sometimes three months ahead, we will really think about putting together a project plan for you and making sure that you are very successful. In the meantime, I'm also really nervous for myself as well. Some of the intern managers may be first-time managers, and they wanted to invest so much in you that it makes a lot of sense to hire you by the end. So all the motivations are working towards you getting hired by the end of the internship. We also have to go through many of the trainings before you start. And in the meantime, by supporting you, we will also have to do the performance review for you as well. So usually for a 12 weeks internship, we have a midpoint review, which is about 6 weeks in. And then getting close to the end of the internship, we'll have a final review for the interns as well. So these two really much decide if you're trending towards an offer or you're getting an offer or not. So that's kind of the prepare for an internship. Next slide, please. And so before I start, I'll usually put together like a 6 weeks plan, a 12 weeks plan for a project. And usually, for me, I started with 3 weeks of something very simple as a starter project. So you can, after you finish your onboarding, you can get into this project very quickly. It might be a very small design project, maybe just a drop down, maybe just adding a button. But this 2-3 weeks project can really help an intern to kind of get a sense of what the workflow is like, feel more comfortable with the design tools, and hopefully that actually shipping something into people's hand and going through like end-to-end flow for software development. And then for the starting week 4, that's usually kind of the bulk of your project. So we'll call the core project. For this one, hopefully that you get a little bit time to have put your teeth in and think about the problem itself. Hopefully you have a divergent phase and kind of converge. And then you work with the engineer, work with your cross-functional team members to actually deliver the design and put the design asset in other people's hands, and hopefully even get to the users. And usually by the last 2 weeks, sometimes I usually put a stretch project for my interns. So this way, for some of the high achievers, you can kind of really stretch yourself, take on some of the other projects, and show your different skill set. And meanwhile, sometimes this time is still needed to dedicate to core project, which is totally okay. And so that's kind of the preparations I do as an intern manager. Next slide, please. So next thing I want to talk about is what I'm looking for as an intern manager. The reason I put back my name in here is that this is all my personal view. It does not representing the company I work for. So this is essentially the person I'm looking for. Anybody who saw Ted Lasso, like he is one of the players. Football is life, and he is very excited. He's really good at playing football, and he just works so well with all the other players on the team. And this is essentially what I'm looking for. Somebody come to the office shouting, "Design is life." Next slide, please. But to be a little bit more serious, so these are some of the things I'm looking for as an intern manager. So I'm really looking for first foremost is a solid team member, and that including a few things. That's actually really simple. The first one is around work ethics, just be on time, showing up on time, showing to work on time, and be showing up on the meetings on time. And the second one is just having a sense of drive, and it's kind of like you can really be resourceful and a can-do spirit that no matter what the challenge is, you're trying to find a way to do that, and be able to kind of self-direct yourself and ask other people to help you. And the third thing is there's some similarity between the first point and the third point, which is trustworthy and responsive. This is the way I think about it is very simple. Is essentially for trustworthy is you do whatever you say you do. So if you tell me that, oh, I wanted to work on this for let's say 3 days, I'll come back with a few options. And that's something that you said, and then 3 days later say, hey, Roger, these are some of the options I explored. That shows a sense of trustworthy and also responsive of your work ethics. And the last thing is really kind of collaborating well with your cross-functional team members. In many of the work team, like almost all the modern day work is very collaborative. You have people from the research, engineering, product management you have to work with. So being able to kind of show up, representing your ideas, listen to other people's feedbacks, and address those feedbacks, those are kind of some of the soft skills you really need as collaborative as a team member. To really kind of cap this, when I think about kind of my ideal kind of candidate, I really kind of think through the lens of my future teammates. One of the things that as a hiring bar in Facebook, in Meta, is to say that whoever we hire, that's somebody that you're willing to work for in your future. Let's say if Cindy comes to interview, I say, oh yeah, I can definitely see myself work for Cindy. That would be a great way to meet the bar in terms of hiring a new team member. So I'm looking at my intern as my future team member. So I wanted to making sure that this person is somebody I feel like I'm really comfortable working with or even work for in the future. So that's the solid team member part. The second part is, I would say, as an emerging designer, you don't have to be as experienced as Cindy. You don't have to be like a rock star. That's not the point. The point is that you're emerging to become a great designer. So the first thing is that you have some basic skills and that is you feel very comfortable with color, typefaces. Those are the things that you have gained through either schools or trainings. And your willingness to learn, and that's really, really important, I would say, because there's so many different things that outside of design you have to pick up on your job. So for example, one of the products I worked on is called attribution. When I first joined the team, I have no idea what attribution is. One of the projects I work for in Panorama Education is for K-12 schools in the United States. I myself never been through the K-12 education system in the United States. So I needed to put myself in a learning as a learner, really to learn about all these new domains I never know anything about. So willingness to learn is something really important. And something kind of really is a benefit is speed of learning. So if you come in as a designer, understand your learning style, understand the best way for you to pick up a skill set or pick up a domain knowledge, and knowing how you learn and really learning really fast is something that's also really, really helpful that you can shine through as an emerging designer. The last but not least, which is I think become more and more common for designers today, is you're taking an iterative approach to design. So you wanted to have divergent ideas, and then you can make intentional design decisions to drive into converge to say, hey, now I have 3 different options. After I talk to users or I see some of the data, these are the 1 or 2 ideas I would recommend. And I wanted to work with engineer to think about the feasibility of them. So those are also very important skill set for emerging designers. And when I think about kind of my emerging designer in that category, I really think about, okay, this will be a person I will look up to as my design community peer in the future. So in Facebook, in Meta today, it's really crazy. We have about 1.5 1,500 designers today. And these are a pool of design talent that I'm thinking about. They will be my peer in the future. And I love to learn from my peers. So when I think about, or when I think about the intern through a manager perspective, I'm looking at, hey, if this intern can be a great design talent in the design community in the future. So those are some of the things I'm looking for as an intern manager. Next slide, please. Next, I wanted to share 2 stories. The first story I want to share is one of my interns at Panorama Education, and her name is Karen, and she is on the call today, I believe. And so she did an internship in 2018. At the time, she designed a unified visual system for over 1,000 very unique icons and illustrations for the products we serve today at the time. And those icons are used internationally in 17,000 schools across almost all the states in the United States. And by the end of her internship, I write a letter of recommendation for her, and this is what you see on the right side. And I met her in a portfolio review in RISD, and I convinced her to join Panorama as an intern. She applied and was accepted. And I would say after spending 2 days in our old office with no air conditioning, we moved to a very new office location and we started an internship. Next slide, please. And these are some of the work that she has done during the internship. So some of the things I want to call it out. And the first thing is that if you see on the bottom left, and she did lots of different iterations and explorations during the internship. So these are some of the ideas that essentially was benched, and we got some of the feedbacks from different team members, and we started to explore different options there. And another thing I want to call it out is that she really kind of take a very good way of thinking about the documentations of the design, thinking about how an icon goes from really large size to very small size, how they kind of scales in a different way. And then they really kind of come together as a set. It's not just beautiful, but also kind of for a user who come into our product can see that the thoughts and care that we went into putting those kind of illustration and icons together. And on the top of the top right of the page is where you see the older version of the icon and where it's just not consistent. And by the end of her internship, and all the icons were shipped and to the user's hand, and you can see the impact that she delivered through her internship. Next slide, please. She worked really well with our cross-functional team members. So the large photo you're seeing here is that she's showing her design to our PMs, to our engineering team members, and we're getting the first-hand feedbacks from those team members. We also have customer success team members in that room as well. And on the bottom left of the page, she is also be able to talk to our CTOs and also our CEOs at the time, just to getting the feedbacks on her design through kind of large format design sharing by the end of Friday, kind of work day. So those are really her way of showing off her cross-functional team learning skill, collaboration skills. Next slide, please. So as an intern manager, I would say she tick all the bars in from my perspective. Karen is works really hard, and she is really on time, 9 o'clock, and 5 p.m. she's gone, and not a minute later, but she is just really professional, really kind of on time. And she is also really kind of resourceful. Like whenever we ran into a problem, she will think about ways to kind of solve that problem together. And she just worked really well with our cross-functional team members. She had great skills in the color and typefaces. And when she was started to work on our product, she learned quite a bit about kind of K-12 space, and also kind of using icon to representing a really diverse group of people, which is not a very easy challenge. And also she learned quite a bit about K-12 and also SAS. So she definitely meet all the bars in here. Next slide, please. By the end of her internship, I got a card from her, and the cover is one of the design icon that she made. That it didn't went into the production, but I really liked it, and so she made that for me. And the other thing I wanted to call it out is that you can see in the card, she did use a pencil to write the writing first, and then write again. So that really shows like how much time, like effort and attention that she put into all the things that she created. So I really kind of grateful for all the times and supporting her as a manager. Next slide, please. But I have to say, like, she didn't get a full-time job offer by the end after she graduated. And this is a classic, it's not you, it's me problem. Just like Cindy mentioned, there's many times there is a very strong talent, but at the time of her graduation, we just don't have a headcount at the time. And because the company we work for, Panorama Education, was still a relatively young startup, and the headcount for design is not easy to come by. So I made a strong recommendation for her, and she got a job at OnePlus, and now today actually work at HBO. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy for her. So once again, I think Cindy's advice is spot on. In many times, make a job to happen is not very easy. It's not necessarily just your manager's job. You wanted to communicate early, you wanted to look for a full-time job, but meanwhile also kind of apply for other jobs as well. Next slide, please. So the second thing I wanted to talk about a different experience I had at Meta. So this is one of my interns I worked with, and I'm gonna say they didn't get the return offer. And next slide, please. And so some of the things that for this intern, I had a little bit challenging time. So this intern that they are not able to really kind of show up on time, and sometimes will just skip half the day. And the one thing that also a little bit bothering to me is kind of not as really bring a sense of drive to the work. Essentially, uh, when kind of asked to giving a challenge, um, then they will ask like, what's the next steps? And so I feel like almost you're thinking about like solving a problem set back in school. And at some time, I, as this person's manager, feel like I'm solving the problem set for this person. So that is become a little bit challenging as an intern. Um, and then we have a kind of an internal Slack channel that we have, and this intern, like whenever uh, we reach out, uh, and at the time we still COVID, so it was just not very responsive on the internal Slack channel, and sometimes take hours to respond. And when collaborating with cross-functional team members, and sometimes the feedback is not really well addressed. So I find that kind of flashing some of the red flags that's during the internship. Next slide, please. I'm also reflecting quite a bit of how I did as an intern manager. I think that there are quite a few things I could do to support this intern much better. So one of the things I reflect quite a bit after that experience is that how I can you make our one much better. So I think at the time I was focusing a little bit too much on solving the design problem. But I could have put more time and effort into thinking about how can I create the right condition for this intern to succeed. So maybe that there's some parts that it's just not supporting her really well. So another part is really about kind of thinking through the empathy part. This in the midterm, like in the later stage of the internship, after many kind of deep dive conversations, I learned that this person, they are experiencing graduating. We're also kind of in the COVID, lots of burnout. So they are really burned out during this time. And this person also moved to a new city without a support network. So coming back to Cindy, what she talked about support network earlier. So these two factors contributed to this person not able to kind of showing up really well at work. So I would say my mistake is that I think I spent quite a bit before this intern arrived. I spent a lot of time really preparing for the project. But I like reflecting back, I'm thinking, what if I spend even half the time to really prepare for the condition that this person is going to work in? So I think that potentially can avoid burning out. And so these are some of the things I have learned. Next slide, please. And I also want to say that sometimes a job doesn't work out is not necessarily the bad thing. He is Sam Liu, the Marvel character, and he said yesterday, hey, he was laid off from Deloitte, and he said that he owes his life to being let go from a career he hated. So accounting is not for him, and I think it worked out well. So I really look forward to 10 years later down the road, my intern say, hey, I'm really happy that Roger didn't give me an offer. So, and in there, yeah, there's never a straight line. Looking back, it will make sense to you. Next slide, please. So yeah, so kind of really quick recap. I went through like what a 12-week internship is like, what I'm looking for as an intern manager, one use case, one study for Panorama, one study for Meta, And the last thing I want to talk a little bit kind of tips and guides. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I want to say really kind of start early. So usually if you're looking in HBO, in Facebook, in Meta, usually the internship close the application around the fall, in the fall. So you really want to think about next summer's application a little bit earlier. And then the second part, I'm quoting Cindy here, live your life at the boundary of your job description. So I think really kind of pushing the boundary of your work, if you can really stretch yourself at your job, that can be really, really helpful. And the next one is very simple, just be on time, be professional. And if you are able to get a design internship, that's awesome. And if not, like I would recommend just get a job at McDonald's, any place that it requires kind of job applications. I think Charlie Munger mentioned something along the line of he thinks the best education in the United States is McDonald's because they provide such a basic training for millions, maybe billions of people that going through their fast food chain to just be professional and show up on time. And those are the things that you never taught in K-12 schools. And the last thing I want to mention is just the career is really, really long. And one thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about is that even after you get a job return offer, you come back to join. Some of the interns I have talked to experience is that during the internship, they have a really, really structured 12 weeks. And then when they come back, that structure is almost gone. And Cindy is laughing, so she probably know. Like now you are really kind of in a swimming pool and then you say, hey, what's going on? Like what happened? And this is where it's the kind of beginning of your career that you have to really think about structure work for yourself, structure project for yourself, because some of your support network is no longer there and the career is really long. So that's all the things I can offer. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much to Roger and Sydney for sharing so much of their gems. I feel like we went very broad and like very deep as well, not only just focusing on that balance of soft and technical skills, actually kind of leaning a little heavier on the importance of those soft skills too, of like communication and collaboration. But also, I also sense this mutual understanding between you two of like understanding that the career is long and that there's no one right way to go about it. So it really is like a balance of like patience and what are some of those small things that you can do outside of the direct work that you're doing, like networking, to really maximize your, your overall length of your career. And it's interesting things that happen. So thank you so much. We do have quite a few questions. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get through all of them, but I'm going to definitely go with the ones that are most voted first. So this question says, how do you build genuine relationships with people on your team, like your manager and your mentor, and those who are not directly in your team, like project managers, developers, in relation to a remote setting? So that's kind of the reality for a lot of current and growing number of companies and teams, is how do you kind of build those very authentic and genuine connections when you're not sitting next to somebody, or you can't run into them down the hall and you kind of have to like reach out to them. It takes a little more effort. What has been that experience like for you two?
Cindy, go ahead. You're an expert
Okay.
on relationship.
First.
I started my job at the very beginning of the shutdown here in Los Angeles. So I'm very familiar with the challenges of getting to know people remotely. And it is super hard. I'm not going to lie to you. And luckily there are lots of tools that companies have started to put in place to really facilitate communication. Slack or whatever video conferencing software that your company uses is definitely going to be your friend here. I would highly advise when you're in meetings, turn your camera on. It's so easy to just be like, I didn't shower this morning. I'm in my PJs. I don't want my camera on. I don't want anyone to see me. I'm a victim of doing it too. But when you have your camera on, it's so much easier to connect with other people that you're having a conversation with. You're more naturally going to participate more in the conversation, and they're going to remember who you are too. Also take advantage of Slack or whatever chat software you use. Usually there are groups that are less work related, more social, things like sharing pictures of your pets, or maybe you're really into baking bread or something. Those are great ways of connecting with people. It's really the same way that you're going to connect with someone outside of work in real life. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. Using the tools that you have available and building on top of that. And I've also learned to to not be afraid to just reach out to someone randomly as well, or be the person that says like, do we have a chat or a channel for non-work related fun stuff? If not, I'll like kick it off and kind of get the momentum going for that. So if it hasn't happened for your team, you could be that person, and it's like another feather in your hat of like, hey, I like to contribute to the team culture in more ways than just my work. Roger, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say building a genuine connection, especially in COVID, is challenging. One of the things I find has been really helpful, at least for me, is just really leveraging your one-on-ones. And I'm a somewhat introvert. Like I find myself building relationship during one-on-one a little bit more. And sometimes, in addition to talking about work, I will definitely ask about other people's kind of personal lives. And I have find a way to build a meaningful relationship in this way. The other advice I want to say is like in Yao you mentioned earlier, just reach out to people. I have both be the person who make those requests, receive the requests. It's just amazing how many people is willing to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next one we have is, ooh, this one's good. This is for Cindy, but I'm sure both of you can answer this question. It's how do you start the conversation with a potential mentor? For example, this person said that I always feel like I'm not good enough to show them my work, or lack of experience. So how can they get over a little bit of those butterflies or feeling of nervousness that they feel not super confident about their work yet?
Oh man. Well, the good news is we all get those feelings. So don't worry. It doesn't matter how quote unquote good or not good you are. You're going to feel that way. So that might or might not be comforting to hear. But one way to get through that is to remember, like you're there for a reason. If you're in your internship and you're afraid to reach out to someone that you think is like really awesome at your company, you're good enough to be at that company too. If you're an intern at Meta with Roger, you're just as good as anyone else, and you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else. And just keep reminding yourself that it's not always easy. Sometimes you have to make yourself do it anyway. There's a quote from this woman that I love. She's the former CMO of Netflix, and it's "Do it scared," which I like, because so many times people are like, oh, just be fearless. But I'm not fearless. I'm afraid of a lot of things. It's okay to be scared, do it anyway. And you'll find, as Roger said, it's really incredible how you reach out to people. Most people are going to respond to you with kindness and excitement and want to help.
Yeah, definitely. Just one thing to add, I love what Cindy has said, and I think for myself, I also have those fears. And the other thing that I find myself, the method I use is I want to make sure that I'm the time we spend with the mentor, that the mentor is meaningful. And the way I do that is I will research a little bit about this person I'm reaching out to, and know this person's strengths, experiences. And when I reach out to this person, I really wanted to ask questions or gain feedbacks on a specific area, and that makes things much easier. I remember in a meeting and kind of just walking out, ask my team member, say, hey, can you give me some feedback? And he pulled me aside, and she said, Roger, that's not the best question to ask as from feedbacks. You can ask me questions to say, can I get some feedbacks on this design, this interaction, but just be a little bit more specific. And this usually helps like zooming your conversations much easier. So it's a very tactical advice there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned just like setting aside time to do a little bit of homework on that potential mentor that you're reaching out to, because odds are they're probably higher in the organization or further along their career. So their day-to-day may be super busy. So you want to come into the conversation like prepared with the objective or some questions you already have on hand. So it's very much showing that you value their time and you want to make it as equally beneficial to both you and them as much as possible. I think we have time for one more question. So this one says, how can this person talk about conversion with their manager, and how can they be best prepared for performance reviews / interviews when it comes to conversion? So it sounds like they know this is a thing, it's part of the overall process, but how can they kind of initiate or best be prepared for that type of conversation when it is talking about performance and measuring and how that factors into conversion?
Do you want to start, Roger?
Yeah, that's hard. Let me jump to this one. First, if you're in an internship, there's a high chance that people wanted to hire you because there's so much time that the company around you is put in to make you become a better designer. So that's quite a bit of investment. So you're very much in a good boat. I would say usually the best way to say, hey, if I were that intern, I would say, hey, Roger, I'm interested in working in, let's say, HBO, and Cindy, please give me kind of good feedbacks during our one-on-ones and making sure that I'm tracking well, I'm on track. And if there's anything that I can improve on, definitely let me know, and just be a little bit more proactive, ask the questions about your performance, not to ask too much about the final kind of offer or not. This is when you ask for offer, usually I would they would say, hey, please ask the recruiter. But ask about, hey, am I performing well? Am I doing the things that you expect me to do?
I love that.
Yeah, I totally agree with Roger. I mean, I definitely think that you should be saying these things to your manager again, early and often. And you can ask, what is it that you're looking for in a design hire? What is it that you're looking for in an intern that would cause you to want to hire them, to convert them? And you can use kind of those answers to set goals for yourself as well. And don't be afraid to be honest with your manager. They know that you're an intern. They know that you're probably looking for your first job and that you're hoping that it's at the company that you're at. So they should be empathetic and honest with you in return.
I love that. Yeah. I think like having that conversation also, like you said, early and often makes you more used to talking about that and making it part of your regular work life too, to be clear about expectations and performance and what that looks like long term. So I love that you've mentioned that a few times too, just go ahead and do it and go into it even if you're feeling nervous. I think that's definitely something that resonates with like my past self, where I felt like I had to perform like a ideal team member when I didn't even know what that really meant. And so I'm glad that that's becoming more common in work culture to show a little bit more like empathy and vulnerability to have those conversations of where we currently are at and where we can improve. With that, I would like to thank our speakers, Sydney and Roger, for sharing their valuable time and their knowledge with us. I hope everybody can go crazy in the chat, say thank you. I learned a bunch. Please share your insights and learnings, and hope you took some screenshots like I did too, because that makes for really good notes for afterwards, and share them online with others what you learned, so you can kind of pass along and pay forward the awesome insights. With that, thank you all for joining us today and sharing a piece of your day with us. And I hope we will let you go back into the world. Please be safe and be happy, and we'll see you in our next event. And then for our speakers and our organizers, we'll stick around and do a quick retro afterwards before we call it a day. Thank you so much. And yes, this is recorded. If we haven't answered that question, it is available on our YouTube channel, as are all of our past events as well. Very valuable and helpful. Oh, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.
I wish we had outro music as like we have intro music. It's also a little like
yeah,
awkward.
Someone has to pull up their Spotify or something.
I know.
Or I'm sorry, Apple Music. I should be saying
Oh,
Apple
sorry.
Music.
How dare we?
It's okay. I don't work there anymore. It's fine.
So, Sydney,
Oh.
do you know Roger's intern that went to HBO? Or is it?
No, no, it's just a serendipitous coincidence. No, he was telling me about it earlier before we jumped on with everybody else, but now I'm gonna have to try to find her. Not to be creepy,
Yeah,
if you're still
Carol's on the East Coast. Yeah.
It just shows how much of a small world it is too. And
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love
Small
that
community.
both of you talked about the importance of not just being comfortable bragging about your work, but in itself bragging about your work and posting content online. You build this reputation so that, you know, as you grow in your career, you're gonna have, it ends up being like opportunities pop up. It's kind of like investing. It kind of like you have, you know, big returns later on when you get comfortable with, you know, sharing yourself outside of just work day to day.
Definitely.
Yeah, totally. Maybe Anna will end up on Roger's team in a few years.
I have.
Or are we joining a breakout room?
Yes.
Oh yeah, the speakers, we will hop into a breakout room. Everyone else,
Okay.
See you later.
bye. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone. Uh-oh.
Do you need me to move you?
I think
in
I
again?
need it again. I didn't click it and then it went away.
Oh, good. Oh, actually, 1 second. I will actually bring everybody back here because I remove everybody else.